Hello and welcome to the Change Gang podcast with me, your host, Laura Ordile. I'm here to help you hold on to your sanity and your soul as you move through big change. I'm here to guide you from frustration to flow in your life, bridging the practical and the woo, just for you. Let's go. Welcome to the week, Change Gang. I'm happy to have you back with me this week, and I have the amazing Lori Hammond with me this week, and I'm so excited. Lori became a professional hypnotist because hypnosis shifted her out of ongoing clinical depression. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Hypnosis changed her life so much that she now loves giving people simple, in-the-moment tools they can use to find freedom from the issues that have haunted them for years, sometimes decades. Lori's facilitated hundreds of online group hypnosis sessions and has discovered the secrets to infusing transformation in a group setting. I love that. I love that. Thanks for being here, Lori.
Thank you for having me, Laura. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited too. So I want to tap right into the journey a little bit, because this is not the direction that you were headed in life at all. Hypnosis was not where you were going, what you were doing. So how did you find hypnosis and how did it help you?
Okay. I'm not sure how far back you want to go, so I'll give you a really quick blip of to set the landscape, which is I grew up, my childhood aspiration was to grow up and become a hairstylist. I loved, the only reason I play with dolls is to do their hair. I loved doing hair. I loved the creativity of it. And I ended up getting married a month after just after my 18th birthday. Had my first baby a month after. What's that?
Me too. How funny is that?
Yeah, I had my first baby a month after my 19th birthday and ended up just being a stay-home mom, having the most exquisite, amazing, incredible job in the world and being a stay-home mom for 15 years. And I went through a divorce then and I thought, okay, it's time to pursue my dream of being a hairstylist, and I absolutely loved it. It was the part that was surprising to me. I loved the creativity of the hair, but it was surprising to me how much I loved connecting with my clients when my clients were sitting in the chair. And there's something special about being able to have your hands on someone's head that you can't do, and you can't touch people in most professions. So it was really beautiful. And I started asking myself, because another of my childhood aspirations was to travel. I desperately wanted to travel and to see the world, and I had lived in the same state my whole life. And I started asking myself, how can I make an excellent living and stop trading time for money? Not have to be behind the chair to make money. And I kind of asked the question as a way of just I didn't know at the time, I was letting my unconscious mind show me answers. And I started listening. The podcasts were brand new at this time. Hardly anybody knew what a podcast was. I started listening to podcasts and I stumbled on a hypnosis podcast. And I was listening to the hypnosis podcast. It was actually by a man who I now consider my mentor. His name is Mike Mandel. And I thought, it doesn't really work this well. And I was really skeptical. I had been raised to believe that hypnosis was of the devil, that it was mind control, and that it was evil. But this guy, he built so much trust with me, and I loved listening to this podcast, and I just started asking myself, maybe this is the key to helping me with my weight struggles. And so that's why I initially leaned into hypnosis, was to help with weight. I'd struggled with my weight my whole life. And I went and saw a couple hypnotists. I made appointments with 2 different hypnotists. It was a really not good experience with both of them. And so I thought, I'm just going to learn this myself. And I went to train with them. And in Canada, I went to train with Mike Mandel and Chris Thompson. And it just radically changed my life. The hypnosis community, it's such a beautiful community of just these open-hearted healers. And it feels, another thing I grew up with was reading the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And to me, hypnosis feels like Narnia because it works like magic. It works so beautifully. And the surprising thing, Laura, is that as I was going through the training and as I was learning these tools, it took me a while to figure out the weight piece, but on my way there, it radically shifted me out of chronic lifelong depression. And I started asking myself, because the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our questions. And so the fact that I had been asking myself, how can I make an excellent living and not trade dollars for hours? I started thinking, and this is before anybody knew what Zoom was, way pre-pandemic. I started thinking, I wonder if I could do group hypnosis online from anywhere in the world so that I could do it, traveling in Europe and traveling all over the place. And I just started thinking, what if? And most people would have said, no way. There's no way you could do it. But I'm kind of an outside the box person. And so I started experimenting and learning and discovering what worked and what didn't. And the rest is history.
Wow. So I have to ask, I'm going to backpedal a little bit. So you went and you tried two different hypnotists.
Yes.
And they didn't go so well.
Right.
And first of all, I'd love for you, and you don't have, obviously don't share names or anything, but if you could share maybe what didn't connect for you in that. And then, so it didn't work for you, or it didn't connect, you didn't have a good experience, and yet you still said, yeah, but I think there's something to this. What held you in there? Because a lot of people who would have that experience with that, a negative experience would be like, oh, forget it. That's not going to work. That's not a good thing. So what happened where they were not good experiences for you?
That's a great question. So I had been listening to Mike Mandel's podcast for months. I bet it had been 6 months. And I still to this day do this. Like whenever I'm driving or if I'm going on a walk or if I'm going on a hike, I'm always listening to something. And so they had like been my constant companions for months. And so I really believed that it could work, but I didn't understand how it worked. And I didn't, I still had a lot of questions. And so when I went to see the first hypnotist, it was a woman. And if I remember correctly, in my mind, this is how it's been a few years, but in my mind, she lived very near one of my childhood homes. So it was very triggering right off the start. And when I walked into her house, it was decorated. She had these like mauvey pink curtains, and I think she had mauvey pink carpet, and it just felt like 1989 to me, and it freaked me out. So first of all, that has nothing to do with her, but I was on edge as soon as I got there. And then while I was in the appointment, she kept telling me to visualize. And at the time, I believed, and honestly for years after, I believed that I am unable to visualize. And I thought this is ridiculous. I can't do any of this. I'm obviously not a good hypnotic subject. This isn't going to work for me. And she and I didn't really have a lot of rapport. I didn't feel super safe and comfortable with her, which is really important in a hypnosis session. I know now. So I went and tried a different hypnotist. I looked him up online. I found somebody that had great reviews. He was this big hypnotist in Denver. And I was sitting in his waiting room waiting for him to come and find me. And I heard him coming down the hallway around the corner, and I heard him go just before he walked out to get me. And I thought, this guy hates his job. So we went into the session, and it was a little better. I felt like he had the setting. It felt very peaceful and hypnotic. There was one point in the session where he was speaking to me, and he told me to open my eyes and look at my hand. And he was like pinching and twisting my hand, and I didn't even feel it. And I didn't know he was doing that. And he was doing this as a convincer, and it worked well. And yet I didn't really get any results from the session. And I thought, I'm not a good subject. And so I thought, I'm going to go learn how this works so that I can figure out how to help people who can't visualize and who are very analytical thinkers figure out how to make hypnosis work for them and figure out how this works well enough that they can actually guide others through the experience.
So it was like, these, you felt inside, this is not how it's really supposed to be. This is not exactly how we do this. And
Yeah.
so there was that little thing inside you that still said, go explore, look at it. There is
Yeah.
something to it.
I think, and I have since discovered, I think many people who are learning hypnosis feel this way when they're freshly trained. This like, I feel like there's a part of us that feels like there's something. I have this hat here. I'm going to pull out the hat.
I love that hat.
Really
That's
a person
hat.
in a wizard hat. There's really something magical about this person. And there's like some kind of woo-woo thing that a person needs to have to be an effective hypnotist. And I wasn't sure that I had that. And I'm a very analytical person. I'm a very like, I need to see it to believe it kind of person. And I am also a girl who grew up reading Narnia. And there's a part of me that believes that somewhere there's a wardrobe that I can step into and be transported to a magical land. So the part of me that decided I'm going to push through and I'm going to figure this out was a part of me that was just like crossing my fingers and hoping that magic really does exist. And I have discovered that it does.
I think it does. I think hypnosis is magic. And that's why I tell people, because oftentimes they're like, well, when you're describing things and you're telling them here's what we do, or here's how it works, or you're giving an analogy or something, and at some point I just end up saying basically it's magic. It's magic.
Yeah.
That's what it does.
That's the easiest way to explain it. There's lots of neuroscience behind it, and you can explain it a million different ways, but the easiest way is to just say it's magic.
It is. And I think that's because our brains are magical. I really do. I think that our brains can do these amazing, incredible things, and we don't give it enough credit sometimes for all that it is doing already and all that it can do for us. That they say we only tap into a tiny bit of our brain, and I think that's quite right. That there is so much more there that we can do and expand on. So did you actually then go and was that before they were doing online stuff? Did you go up to Canada, you said, or did you do training in person?
So they did have an online training at that point. And so shortly after I had those two not great experiences, I decided to go ahead and sign up for their online training. And I binge watched the whole thing. People will take months to go through. I'm pretty sure I consumed the entire program within a month. Every time I worked, in my job as a hairstylist, I worked 3 13-hour days. So I had 4 days off a week, and I was spending the entire day from the time I opened my eyes in the morning till I went to bed at night studying hypnosis, which is kind of my personality. And I absolutely loved it. It was so intriguing to me, and it did just feel kind of like the veil was being lifted. And on their podcast, they talked about being at Hypnothoughts, which is the largest hypnosis conference in the world. And I tend to be very introverted. I don't really think of myself as a social conferencey kind of person, but something inside just said, sign up for this. I'm going to do it. And I just decided, this is another opportunity for me to travel, even though it was just to Las Vegas. And I signed up for Hypnothoughts. I signed up for Mike Mandel's pre-conference workshop. It was a 1-day pre-conference workshop. And Laura, when I got there, I discovered that these two men, Mike Mandel and Chris Thompson, are just the kindest, most genuine, beautiful souls in the world. And their audience, all the people who were there, I think there were maybe about 50 people there, if I remember correctly, for the pre-conference. Just such open-hearted, genuine, kind people. And I thought, this is my tribe. I found my people. And I was speaking with Chris Thompson during a break, and he said something about the Canada training. And as soon as he walked away, I signed up for the Canada training to go and train with them in Canada. So even though I'd gone through the entire online course, I went and trained with them in person. And I'm so glad I did, because it was just a life-changing event.
So you traveled too in that one. You got to go travel.
That was my first time out of the country, going to Orlando.
I know. Ontario. Would that be right? Toronto. There you go.
Yes. Yeah. And they lost my luggage on the flight. I'm in my first out of the country flight, and I get off the plane and they have lost my luggage. And I'm walking around and I'm using my hypnotic skills, like the things that I just learned, and I'm walking with confidence and I'm saying, I am going to be okay. I can do this. I can do this. And inside I was freaking out. So it was my first test.
So how did that go? I guess I want to know. So when you went through the experience and you do back and forth when you're doing training, obviously, you hypnotize somebody else, they hypnotize you. And as you're going along, when did you realize that it was making a difference in your life? How long did it take maybe for you to kind of notice, oh, something's shifted. I'm moving out of that depression. Or did you notice the weight thing first, where there was that evidence of it showing up?
That's a great question. So it's so subtle. For me, it was so subtle because it was never one Shazam moment. And there are, the back and forth practice things. And I really felt like, so when I went to HypnoThoughts, that was my first exposure to the hypnosis community, and his one-day pre-conference, we did some of the back and forth, and I was so insecure, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Just so insecure. So when I went to Toronto, I told myself, I am going to show up as confident Lori. Even though I don't feel confident, I'm just going to act confident. And I showed up as a version of myself that I didn't know existed. And what I now know is that there is no such thing as fake it till you make it. When you step into that persona, if you will, you're essentially activating a part of you. I was activating the confident part of me, but I didn't know that at the time. So I'm doing all of these practice sessions, and I'm pretending like it's working. And as you know, when we pretend like it's working, and we even just simply play along and follow where the hypnotist is guiding us, even if our conscious mind is still involved, the unconscious mind is still being spoken to, and it says, oh, Lori is playing along, so she must be interested in implementing this. And between that training in Toronto and then a training I did with Michael Watson a couple months later, and that one was in Florida, I think in Orlando, called Core Transformation. It's a Connie Ray Andreas training. That training just was very transformational for me. And I didn't really notice that my depression had lifted until I looked back and realized I'm not depressed Lori anymore. And I had a family friend sit me down during my marriage, many years before all of this. He sat me down to have a heart-to-heart talk with me and said, you are the most negative person I have ever known. You, like, everything that comes out of your mouth is cynical and hate-filled, and like all you do is talk bad about people. And it devastated me. I just cried because I didn't realize that's what kind of person I was. And every time someone sits me down now and says, you are one of the most optimistic people I know. I have a friend that tells me I'm sparkly. And each time I'm like, what are you talking about? This is me. And it's almost hard for me to realize the shift that has happened, but it's all been just very organic. And one of the things that is most, I think, can be frustrating for hypnotists is when a problem changes on an unconscious level. So you were talking at the beginning about how that we have so much capacity that's untapped, because the conscious mind, the part of us that actually is paying attention to stuff, only accounts for the very tippy tip of the iceberg. So when a person experiences that subconscious change and those subconscious shifts below the surface, it happens in such an organic and beautiful way that very often they don't even remember what it was like to have the problem. So they don't realize how much they've changed and shifted, because they don't, like, the changes happen so organically on such like an innate personality level that they don't realize it's happened. And that's kind of what happened with me as well.
Can you Can you look back and see that version of you?
It's so interesting because I've never looked at it like this before. But when I look back, you know what I think, Laura, and it might just be because we're having this conversation, but it's almost as if the Lori who got off that plane and realized that she was going to go to a brand new Airbnb, no idea how she was going to get there because she had no service on her phone, so she didn't know how to call an Uber. And was walking through the airport with her head held high as if she owned the world, even though she was terrified on the inside. It's almost as if that first choice of changing, I don't know if this is a place to go into the 3Bs, of changing my 3Bs shifted everything. And I really give the 3Bs credit for bringing me out of depression.
Well, tell people what the 3Bs are.
So the 3Bs is this. This is the first time that I actually went back. The following year, I got to go back and I actually got to present this self-hypnosis for hypnotists is what I called the presentation. And I called it that because I knew how much hypnotists struggle with knowing how to use these tools for themselves. And so it was a 1-hour presentation, and it took me an hour to explain what I'm going to explain in just a couple minutes here, which is the 3Bs is the fastest, most effective, foolproof form of self-hypnosis in the world. And it is body language. That's the first B, breathing, and belief. And all belief is a B word that means your self-talk, what you're saying in your mind, your thoughts. And all beliefs is recycled self-talk. It's a thing that we say over and over and over until we truly believe it. So if anyone has ever tried affirmations and they haven't worked well for them, that's because affirmations is the third B, and they really work best if you change the first 2 Bs first. So if a person is experiencing depression and you can tell just by looking at them, you can tell by their body language, you can tell by the way they're breathing that they're down. So if a person shifts into an optimistic body language, takes a deep, invigorating breath all the way down to the toes, because depression is an exhalation issue. People who are depressed tend to have more of an emphasis on their exhale than their inhale. When they take deep, invigorating inhales, change their body language by bringing everything kind of up and looking up, and then use that third B, that belief, by just saying something as simple as, I am here. Or like me in the airport, I can do this. Something really simple. It's not these flowery, beautiful, eloquent affirmations. The unconscious mind loves to communicate in very simple, almost like 5-year-old language, words that a 5-year-old would understand. So something as easy as I can do this works so much better than every day and every way I'm getting better and better, which is a fine affirmation, but yeah.
No, yeah, and I often say I'm okay, or I'm already okay. Yeah. No matter, and I tell people that you need to realize you're already okay. There's a part of you inside of you that's okay. And it's just important. That was kind of how I found that hypnosis had worked for me, because all of a sudden I was just feeling a calmness inside myself, no matter really what was going on around me. And that's not to say, and I say this all the time when I'm talking with people, that I don't have moments of anxiety, of irritation. I'm a human, and I'm on this roller coaster of life, and I'm going to go through all of them. And as a hypnotist, I never want to take those away from anyone, because you're meant to experience them, just not stay in them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the key, when I talk with people, it's like, I don't want to take your emotions away from you. I want you to experience them in the best way possible, and to move into that. And when I realized, I'm really upset about this or this. And yes, I was upset in the moment, but it was more like a flash than this long burning thing that was stayed in me. And I didn't have the repetitive thoughts that normally I would have. And those are hard. Yeah. When you talk to yourself and you're talking to yourself about a lot of crap all the time, and it just goes, and all those negative thoughts go into the next one and the next one. Before you know it, you're a bag lady all by yourself for the rest of your life with no money, living, over here, and the pigeons are stealing your food. And that's where it will take you. If your imagination is there and it's going to run with it, you're the one that gets to reel it in or change it or director. You're the director, the navigator in that. And so I had to learn to reel that back in and kind of go in the other direction with it. Sounds like you did that too, where it's like,
Yes.
oh, I can find some of the happier things.
Well, what's that?
You can find some of the happier things.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up, because I also think when we're resisting emotion, when we're trying to stop feeling something, it's almost like resistance creates this sort of clenching that even keeps it stuck even more. So when we just acknowledge and accept, like, I'm feeling depressed, and that's really, since I've given that first presentation, I've learned that the first step really is just like being with yourself wherever you are. And what's amazing to me is that I've learned that, because when I felt depressed before, I identified as that. I self-hypnotized myself to say, I am depressed. I have been diagnosed with severe clinical depression multiple times. Like, it was my identity. And so when those depressive things came in, I felt like that I had to succumb to them. Whereas now I realize that I don't have to stay there. And I was just explaining this the other day. So I grabbed my phone because I was saying I'm an Android user, which a lot of people think is really weird. And the reason is because when I've tried to use iPhones, especially since my kids put pictures of my grandbabies up on Apple, so I could see all those pictures if I could get used to iPhone. But I just, like, it's so weird to figure out how to do it. But when a person learns to use an iPhone after using an Android, they know that they swipe this direction instead of this direction to get to this feature. Like, you teach your muscle memory how to do a new thing. That doesn't mean that you're not going to still remember how to be an Android user. So I even still, especially this time of year, once in a while, I notice myself feeling a little bit depressy. I notice myself, and at first I thought, oh, it didn't work. I'm broken. I'm still broken. It didn't work. And I realized, no, I just remember how to use an Android. I'm always going to know how to do that old habit. But hypnosis allows people to embed and rehearse and habitualize new ways of showing up in the world. And sometimes they might slip back down here, and lucky them, because that's just an opportunity to acknowledge what they're feeling and then come back up here when they're ready.
That's true. That's quite true. And that's something I think is really important for people to know about hypnosis too. And I don't know about you, but I use hypnosis all the time. I still use hypnosis for me all the time.
Yeah.
I love doing, and a lot of the work that we're going to do, that we're going to talk some more about, but is the fact that repetition is there, that access is there to continue to create that little path, just like a path out, in wilderness. When you walk on that path for the first time, it's there now. But the more that you walk on it, the more it becomes an open path to exactly where you want to go.
Yes.
And I think that's so important about hypnosis. And I know you explain it a little bit different way, more scientifically, but I'm more of a, let's keep it simple in the analogy world. So
I think that's a great way to explain it. It's very accessible, and it makes a lot of sense.
So I use that continuously. It's not, I don't know if it's necessary or not, honestly. I just like it. I like the fact that it's there for me. I like the fact that if I am having a moment or I am having an uncomfortable situation about something, I have access to something that I know is going to boost, change, help me find and create these new ways to do something. So I love having access to all the fun stuff that's out there when it comes to hypnosis, because, oh my goodness, you've done, like you said, hundreds of sessions. So I know people must ask, how do you know what to do them on? What do you keep doing? Are you repeating yourself, or what are you doing when you're doing that?
Yeah. So I have done hundreds of group sessions. I've perhaps done hundreds of one-on-one sessions, but when you remember that when I moved into this arena, it was with the thought process of how can I reach a bunch of people at once, essentially. So I just enjoy groups more. And I really struggled to come up with content at first. It was like, what else is there to talk about? And I really wanted to make sure I was meeting people where they were. And so what I've done is I just create a really simple Google form survey and say, what do you want to talk about in the coming weeks? And people will come in and they'll sometimes it will be really random stuff. I'm trying to think of a situation. There was something really super specific recently that someone put on there, but some of them, it might be hair pulling or nail biting or things that like most of the people on the call probably don't experience. And so for me, there's an opportunity to make hair pulling a session that everybody's going to want to attend because they're going to be able to plug in the protocols that we use with them, with any problem. And most of the people, and I never expected this to happen, but most of the people on my weekly hypnosis calls are other hypnotists who are there to be on the receiving end of hypnosis and actually get to experience hypnosis and to get all the tools that I share there and use them with their client, which I tell them use anything you like in your own practice. And it was really intimidating for me. When I started running sessions and the people that signed up were other hypnotists, most of whom had more experience than I did. It was very scary for me. So it's been a journey.
Well, you did it, but you did it.
I did it. Yeah.
Got those 3 B's and you just went for it. So,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that journey with me. I truly appreciate that. And I know that's going to be meaningful to someone out there. I don't know. I never know who it's going to be, but I know it's for someone. And I trust that it gets to the right people so that they understand that they can move through their life and change it in the way they want. And even when they're unsure or they don't know, take the next step. And if you have a feeling for something like you did for hypnosis, and you go to one person or another person, it's like, I don't know, maybe explore a couple more or find the people that you connect with that the reason that you went into that and try, because so many people are so different. And I can't even imagine the number of ways that people do hypnosis. You know, everybody's so different in how they approach it and how they bring it. There's commonalities, but there's so many differences. So I encourage people to go and find that. So thanks for talking with me so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Laura. This has been wonderful. I appreciate you.
And of course, I will have it in the show notes, but if you want to share with people how to find you, what's the best place to go do that?
Yes, so my website is trancypants.com, TRANCYPANTS. And my email is Lori, Lori, @trancypants.com. And I geek out about talking about this stuff, so feel free to email me with questions.
Thanks, Lori. There we go. Get in touch with her, get in touch with me, ask any questions. We kind of love to talk about it. So just saying, we'll chat with you anytime. All right. I hope that you head off and have a wonderful week. And I hope that you meet me same time right here next week. Ciao. I hope today's episode was interesting to you in some way and fun. If so, hey, find someone to share it with. Maybe they need to hear it too, or maybe they'll just enjoy it. If you'd like, go ahead and grab my tips on supercharging your success. It includes a free short meditation to do just that. You can find that at bit.ly/supercharge your success. Until next time, happy day.